what pathways are pulling you in. Hi, my name's Danielle and I'm a partner at SouthStart. What we're trying to do is spread awareness, first and foremost, of the startup ecosystem, bring a lot of education and networks to the surface. South Australia is quite an evolving narrative in terms of the development of our startup ecosystem. SouthStart plays a critical role in bringing public awareness, but also providing a platform for people to connect to the skills and knowledge and additional resources that they need to start companies of scale. I stumbled into SouthStart. It wasn't necessarily a planned journey. It started with the opportunity to take over, I guess, the custodianship of the event, because it's actually been around since 2013. So I was actually an intern at the time, working on a few projects of my own, and then had the opportunity to help with the execution of the first event, and then quickly realised that I was living and breathing all things SouthStart, and now that's become my full-time role. My inspiration I wouldn't necessarily call myself an entrepreneur. I think I'm no different to anyone else that's just trying to figure out my path. I grew up with my family being quite heavily involved in the startup ecosystem and family friends, and I never knew that. So for me it was always quite a foreign environment, and I was actually, since leaving school, followed a very messy path. Started law, dropped out of law, moved over to business, eventually got my degree in commerce, but towards the end of that, through a lot of different travel experiences, realised that I didn't actually know what a startup was. And for me, I stumbled into, I guess, that knowledge when I was in Jakarta, and I got placed at a startup incubator, which I had no idea what that was. And I guess coming back to Adelaide, realised that there was a huge knowledge gap in my understanding, but also more broadly, particularly the next generation. Coming out of a business degree at that time and not knowing, that there was this whole world of technology companies, etc. For me, that was an enormous issue. So I just started digging into where the networks were here, what the startup ecosystem was, and yeah, it was a natural sort of messy story. My personal vision that guides me is to build a future where no one stands alone. And for me, that speaks volumes to my own individual interests, but also more broadly, I think as a society, there are so many people that just feel like they don't have the ability or the support to pursue paths of interest to them. And systematically, we are encouraged to go into X job, study X course, and follow this guided process that we believe to be right. So for me, to be able to, I guess, stand as an alternative voice to that, of encouragement, and this is how it comes into SouthStart, is we essentially are projecting the message that we're here for you as an individual. We are quite literally creating a platform that helps people have that friendship around them and have that support when they are pursuing areas that traditionally are extremely unknown, extremely risky in their view, but may not necessarily be that risky relative to what they could gain. But again, understanding that entrepreneurship is an extremely lonely journey. It's quite often glamorized because we do need entrepreneurs, but I guess call that out and actually address that is something that I'm hugely passionate about. I would give students the advice that listen to yourself. I think first and foremost, in my circumstance, I had travelled, worked way too much throughout uni and had been quite the non-typical student. And I always saw that as a negative thing that I was sort of battling with myself about. But the minute that I guess I started to look introspectively and understand that those experiences and the values that I'd gathered from interactions with others and I guess looking outside of SA and Australia, that became I guess, my biggest asset, and to really trust yourself and navigate through that pathway, not necessarily starting out and saying, I want to be a business owner, I want to be an entrepreneur. I think if you're going down that approach, there can be a value misalignment, but really, I guess, just listening to yourself and understanding what pathways are pulling you in and following that. And then if a business comes out of that, because you're driven by a passion that's so annoyingly loud that you can't ignore it, I feel, and what we see with SouthStart is the most successful business founders, etc., are really heavily led by passion.